You were born into a kingdom most children only see in cartoons. There was a zoo behind your house. Real elephants. Giraffes that leaned over the fence while you ate breakfast. A herd of hippos in a man-made lake your father dug because he thought the land looked empty without them. There was an airstrip, a racetrack, lakes carved out of red earth, swimming pools, a house so big the staff used radios to find each other. You did not know this was strange. You thought every father owned a plane. You thought every family had a lion. When you are small, the world is simply the shape of your own front yard. And your front yard was the size of a town. You were a happy child in the middle of the most beautiful place you would ever live. You just did not know yet what it was built on. The money was never explained. It was just there. The way air is there. Stacks of it in rooms. So much that some of it rotted, and some of it was eaten by rats, and nobody seemed to mind. Your father once burned a small fortune just to keep you and your sister warm one cold night on the run. To a child, that is not crime. That is a father keeping you warm. But children grow. And slowly you began to understand that the toys and the animals and the lakes were not bought with anything ordinary. They were bought with a powder that left other families with empty chairs at their tables. Somewhere, far from your zoo, there were children who would never see their fathers again. And the reason was the same reason you had everything. That is the first thing the name teaches you. Your paradise and someone else's grief were paid for out of the same account. Then the world came to collect. The country your father had tried to buy turned on him, and a war began that did not stay outside the gates. You heard it in the distance, and then you heard it close. Bombs. Sirens that did not stop. The names of people who were there 1 week and gone the next. Your father was the most hunted man alive, and you carried his last name like a target stitched onto your back. To love him was dangerous. To be his child was a sentence. The kingdom emptied. The zoo went quiet. The elephants and the giraffes were taken away by the state, and the hippos were simply left behind in the lake, too big and too stubborn to move. The last animals in an abandoned paradise. You were a boy, packing a bag, learning that home was now a thing you left in the dark. After that, you never slept in the same bed twice. Safe house to safe house. A new town, a new set of rules, a new way to be invisible. You learned to memorize exits. You learned that a knock at the wrong hour could be the last sound you ever heard. Other boys your age were worried about exams and girls. You were worried about whether the car behind you was following, whether the phone was tapped, whether tonight was the night. Your childhood did not slowly fade out. It was taken all at once and replaced with the nervous system of a soldier. You were a teenager who already knew how it felt to wait for the end. And through all of it, you loved your father. That is the part no one tells you. You can know exactly what a man has done and still want him to come home safe. Your father could not stop calling. He was hiding for his life, and he knew, everyone knew, that every phone call he made was a flare shot into the sky, a signal his hunters could trace straight to a rooftop. One call too long, and they would find him. And still he called, to hear your voice, to ask about your day, to be, for 90 seconds, just a dad on the phone with his kid. You were the one who finally said it. You told him, stop calling. Please. They are going to kill you. Imagine being a teenager and having to teach your own father how to stay alive. Imagine loving someone so much that the most loving thing you can say to them is, don't call me anymore. He said, okay. And then, because he could not help it, he called again. You were 16 years old. It was December. The phone rang, but this time it was not him. It was a voice telling you that your father was lying on a rooftop in the city, in the rain, and that he was not getting up. They had finally traced one call too many. There is a version of that day the whole world watched. Soldiers standing over a body, holding it up for the cameras like a trophy, a famous man reduced to a photograph on every front page on Earth. And then there is your version. A boy, in a room, hearing that his dad is dead. The same plain, bottomless grief any child feels, no matter who their father was, no matter what he did. The world got a headline that day. You got the worst phone call of your life. For a few minutes, you wanted to burn it all down. A reporter called you right then, in the rawest hour of your life, and asked how you felt. And you said it out loud, that you would hunt down the people responsible, that you would make them pay. You were 16, and your father was still warm, and the whole world was listening. It lasted only a few minutes. Because almost immediately, you understood something that would save your life. If you picked up the war your father had started, you would die exactly the way he died. So would your mother. So would your little sister. The only way out was to become the exact opposite of the man you came from. Where he took, you would give. Where he destroyed, you would build. Where he made the whole world know his name, you would make the world forget yours. A boy decided, in a single afternoon, to end a war by refusing to fight it. So, you disappeared. You crossed a border with your mother and your sister and almost nothing else. And on the other side, you put down the name you were born with like a weight you finally got to set on the ground. You chose a new name, a new face for the family. You became someone the neighbors had never heard of. A quiet young man, polite, unremarkable, the kind of person no one looks at twice. After a lifetime of cameras and gunfire, no one was the most beautiful thing you could be. You studied. You became an architect. A person whose entire job is to build things that shelter people instead of harming them. You married. You raised a son of your own, and you swore he would grow up in the opposite of what raised you. For years, almost no one knew. The most famous criminal's heir was just a man drawing buildings in a city far away, under a name he chose himself. But a name like that does not stay buried. When the world finally came looking, you made a choice that surprised everyone. You did not cash in. You did the hardest thing instead. You sat down face to face with the children of the people your father had killed. And you apologized. For a man who never would have. You said the word your father never said. Sorry. You spend your life now doing one strange, stubborn job, refusing to let the world turn your father into a hero. Every time someone wears his face on a shirt, you tell them the truth. He was not a legend. He left a country full of empty chairs. And you hold the two truths at once because you have to. He was a man who caused unimaginable pain. And he was your father, who kept you warm, who called when he shouldn't have, who loved you in the broken way he had. The violence he lived inside was never really about you. You were just a boy, born in the middle of the storm, who walked out of it and chose to spend the rest of his life helping other people in from the rain. Every week, we put you inside another impossible life. Born behind a name you never asked for. In a family the whole world thinks it already understands. You were the son who walked out of the storm. Next, we step into the shoes of someone born inside a different kind of empire. One with a crown instead of a cartel, and the same cameras waiting outside the door. Subscribe and find out who you wake up as next.